All right, what is up, Bulldogs? I have the infamous Rich Cooper here from Entrepreneurs in Cars, and he's just got a new book that I was reading, and I thought, okay, got to get Rich on to share it. It's called the Unplugged Alpha. If you haven't checked it out already, go get it. There's a link in the description below. But we're going to talk a little bit about that and just what Rich has been up to. I've always found Rich to be a fascinating guy in this space because unlike there's a lot of men in the space that are teaching a lot of good things, but Rich has been successful in business. He's gone through a lot of things, and he's learned by experience. So I find that it's best to learn from someone who's actually done things and has actually had some of the hard knocks in life. And so that's why I appreciate Rich a lot. So welcome, Rich.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
So maybe just like a quick little background for those that don't know who you are. Maybe you can just give them a little bit of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I started creating content on YouTube in 2014 after I kind of started hating my business. I built something that I found out that I started to hate just in the direction that it was going. So I needed to do something that filled my cup and that was more interesting. And I started interviewing friends in their success rides. I ran out of friends with cool cars really fast. So I did like 5 or 6 episodes with that. And then I really just started talking about business ideas, hiring tips, how to use lawyers in your business, like, typical stuff like that. And then I kind of started leading into the red pill stuff around dating and women and getting some better results there. Cause I just went through the divorce machine. I had just exited a 3-year LTR with a single mommy that blew up. There was all kinds of stuff that just wasn't working in my life. So I just kind of started using the channel to, make my wounds my work sort of thing. And I just went deep down this rabbit hole, which started with The Rational Male and, everything else that kind of went along with that. Pretty much all the books that I recommend in my top pinned comment in all my videos from my Amazon bookstore. And coaching guys, I've done probably over 1,000 consults by now, one-on-one, some group Zoom sessions as well. Collabs with guys like you and many, many others out there. And I've learned a lot along the way. And I really just wanted to take all of that and distill it and put it in something that would come out to around 200 pages, would be an easy read in one day for anybody to consume. It's not for newbies. So if this is like stuff you've never heard of before, you'll probably be a little butthurt around it.
Yeah.
But if you've struggled with getting better results out of life with women and life in general, I think a lot of guys from the feedback that I've gotten so far are really digging it. I mean, you texted me, I think it was over the weekend. You're like, dude, this is going to be an instant classic. So I was like, all right, yeah, I'm glad that it's reaching. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was impressed, and I really like the way that you approached it from both, talking about your own experience, but also not saying it's like it has to be this way, right? Like, I think there's a lot of guys that are like absolutely totally against marriage and totally against all these things, and then it's like, well, you've kind of have a balanced approach in the book. You're like, look, here's all the warnings and here's all the bad stuff that can happen and that you need to be aware of, but hey, you got to make your own choice, and in certain circumstances maybe you're going to make this choice, but at least I've warned you. And I feel like that's a good place to come from, because it's a much more trustworthy position, right? I can trust what you're saying if you don't have an agenda behind it. It's really just helping guys. So
yeah, I don't like it when people tell you what to do and say you have to do this, that, and then ABC sort of thing. Like a lot of people want me to prescribe certain steps to become a millionaire. It's like, okay, dude, it doesn't work that way. But what I really do is I just kind of paint this map and then I'll plot all the landmines on it. And you read the book and you decide what you want to do. I mean, if you want to march through the minefield, that's where I've seen all the dangers. So just be super careful with those red dots sort of thing.
So what do you think is sort of the the biggest maybe message that you have, like for someone who's going to read this book, or that you're really trying to like get across to guys? Like, kind of what's the purpose of the book?
I think the purpose really is to approach it with an open mind and say, look, if you're not getting good results out of life, if you're finding yourself over and over again being frustrated with women, with self-care, with your financial results, with success in general, sit back, grab it, have a read, and see what you can take out of it, because it's full of nuggets. Like, where do you want to start? Like, what do you want to begin with? Basically, is like, the next question that we should ask.
Yeah, well, let's talk. I guess maybe it would be good to talk about kind of your story and how, like, in parts of the book, you talk about your background, about going through the divorce machine, and then having a single family, or a single mother that you were dating, and dealing with her kids, and things like that. So what, yeah, so maybe that's a good place to start, is just like to talk about the business side, and then how your life kind of brought you to these truths and realizations. So what was, I guess, the maybe the thing that made you realize that your old way of thinking was incorrect?
Um, I think I've told the story before, but I was at a retreat in Spokane at Ben Greenfield's house with this men's group. There's about 30 guys staying at his house that day. And I was sitting down over breakfast talking to this guy, Tom, that lived in California, very successful entrepreneur, runs a clinic in self-care. But we were just talking about women and, what was going on in our lives and what kind of results we've gotten out of women. And I was kind of sharing a lot of stories that I had. And he's like, dude, you need to read this book, The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi. I'd never heard of it. So, I got an Audible account on my phone, downloaded it, listened to it on the flight on the way back, listened to it the week after that. I probably listened to the book like at least 5 or 6 times in total since I first got it.
Yeah.
And that starts to open your eyes to a bunch of other stuff. And it forces you to ask yourself a lot of questions like, okay, why did I believe all this crap that doesn't serve me? Why, like where did all this influence come from? Like, where are all these lies coming from? What's the origin of it? And you start to kind of peel away the layers, and it's like an onion. Like when you start to peel away the layers of an onion, you start to like tear up a little bit, because you're like, holy shit, how could I have sleptwalked through my entire life believing these things to be true? And every guy that I've seen, myself included, that believes these things to be true, that follows this old rule book, not get what they're wanting out of life, not get the results they want out of life with women and money and business and all that sort of stuff. Let's unplug from that and find a better rule book to follow. And I did, which, happens to be, basically viewing the world with a red pill lens. And it just doesn't limit your thinking and your views to women. Mm-hmm. I think that you can apply questioning everything to business, finance, banking, hiring employees, friendships. There's a lot of things that you can plug it into and really, set some nice, strong boundaries around your life, what it is that you want to do. And, just really make yourself your own mental point of origin. I mean, the title of the book is The Unplugged Alpha. And I mean, I've always been viewed upon my entire life as a guy, like friends and women would always say, Rich, you're such an alpha male, you're a man's man, blah, blah, blah. But I was always plugged into bullshit, right? Like I was always plugged into stuff that didn't work. I did the whole happy wife, happy life. Well, that didn't work. I did the whole, go get your education and, you'll be happy in the corporate world. Well, that didn't work. I could go on and on with all the things that I was told to do that didn't work.
Yeah. I think, I think we share a similar viewpoint of the red pill, of that it's seeing reality clearly. And I think that some people have gotten away from that, I feel like in the men's community, but I feel like that's something that was pretty apparent in your book, is just this idea, because you talked about business too, right? And it's like, I think you're talking about the first company, the company that you had worked for, and then having that boss that that you kind of got off on the wrong foot with, and then realizing, hey, the reality is, like, it doesn't matter how good of a worker you are, like, power dynamics are important. And
yeah, that's where I learned the lesson that companies will hire slow but fire fast. Like when they have the opportunity to get you off the books, you're gone. Yeah. They don't. And I had just bought my first home maybe 3 weeks before they packaged me off. They knew it. I mean, because I had to have a letter from my bank to get the mortgage and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, you guys just don't give a shit. It was just, they called you down to HR on the 7th floor, because we occupied actually three stories on this building. It was a large building. They pulled you down to the executive offices, right? And there's a lawyer across the table with the HR guy with the vice president. And they just slide an envelope across the table and they're like, here, take this sign and get the fuck out of here. And I was just like, what? I'd given you guys the last like 5.5 years building your business up, doing everything right, training all your people. Just because this prick over here doesn't like me, I'm gone. Okay, cool. I'm out of here. See ya.
Yeah. But that, and that, I think that's a good parallel to, just how women will treat you. like guys don't realize that. And just how life, I mean, people don't really give a fuck about you. Like, they really don't. Like, people will pretend like they do, but but really they're worried about themselves. They're not worried about you and your future. It doesn't matter if you bought a new house and you have a mortgage payment or any of those things, right? It's like you have to look out for yourself. And I think so many guys are trapped into believing that because they've been loyal, that people will be loyal to them.
Yeah, they've put the equity into it. Like a lot of guys believe in relationship equity. Like they'll put equity into the marriage. They'll go and renovate the kitchen and the ensuite bathroom upstairs, and they'll move to the neighborhood that's close to her mom's house. And, you know, you can go right down the list of all the shit that guys do for women. And only 7 years later, they find out she's porking Kevin from sales and she's leaving him and the 4 kids. You know, it happens. There's a meme that I saw at one point, you know, to the point of, you know, people don't give a fuck. And there's 2 parts to it. It's like a cartoon. And the first one's, you know, got a picture of this, like, you know, guy where he's all bummed out. He's like, people don't care about me. Nobody gives a fuck. And then the other one, you know, below that is like, nobody fucking cares. And it's like, right. You know, you can look at it either way. You know, yeah. It's on which side of the fence do you want to lean on? You know, do you want to be the sucky poo, you know, doomer? Or do you want to be like the nobody cares, so cool, you know? Awesome.
Yeah. See, I've seen that meme before, and I love that because it's like, you know, I talk to guys all the time about like starting a YouTube channel or starting a business, and they're like, oh, well, you know, people will, I can't speak really well, or you know, I don't think I could. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. No one cares about you. Like, just do it. Like, you can just do whatever you want to do. And I think so many people are afraid of what other people will think, and that's what stops them.
Yeah. I mean, like the older you get, I mean, you're pretty close to my age, but you probably started to realize by now, if not, you know, years ago, that nobody really cares about you. Like nobody really spends that much time thinking about you. I don't anyway. I mean, I give very few fucks, you know, as far as my opinion and my energy about what I think of other people. It's like, I'll get these DMs and these messages, and you probably get them too, where it's like, oh, look what so-and-so said about you, or somebody did a video about you. It's like, I don't even read them anymore. I certainly don't look at the video. I don't read the emails. Like, I have no time to give that crap my energy. I'm busy on my own purpose, right?
Exactly. Yeah. When you start caring more about what your goals and accomplishment and what you're trying to achieve in life, and that's, I think, something that's been like a recurring theme on your YouTube channel, is this idea of like going after like becoming better instead of chasing women, chasing excellence, like you say, and then you don't have time for all the bullshit, and so you make the right calls when it comes to women in relationships, because you're not faking anything. You don't have to pretend like, how many days should I wait to text back, because you're actually busy, because you're actually doing stuff instead of playing a stupid game.
It sounds like you've read one of those books where it's like, you have to wait X number of days before you text them back. I read one of those books a few years ago. I was going to do a book review, and I'm like, I got nothing good to say about this. I'm just going to skip it.
Yeah, I get all the time from my community, from guys that are asking me like, you know, how long should I wait, and should I buy dinner, and all these questions. And my answer is always like, if you are working on developing yourself as a man and you're focused on your purpose and your mission in life, like, you don't need to ask me these questions, because you'll just do whatever the fuck that you want to do.
Correct.
And that will be the right answer, because it's not what you do, it's how you do it that matters. And that always comes across. Like, everyone always knows if you're doing something because you're trying to please someone, or if you're doing it because it's what you want.
Yeah, there's a certain art and zen to not giving a fuck. It's you know, it's a bit of a skill that guys need to master. There's an entire chapter in my book about doing that.
Now with the book writing process, is this the first time that you've written a book before? I think a lot of people are.
No, I got 2 other ones that I did maybe about 9 or 10 years ago on credit card debt and debt consolidation, settling your own debt. So I've got a DIY guide, basically everything we do in our debt relief company that we charge thousands of dollars to do for people to administer the entire process. There's a book they can buy for less than $10 on Amazon to do it themselves. It's just, there's work involved with doing it, obviously. So I put that out about 10 years ago. People don't really buy it that much. I mean, there's a handful of copies that sell every single month. But you know, this one's been interesting because people really seem to like it. There's some really good feedback on it. So, you know, for me, officially, this is the first big one anyway.
Yeah. How was the process of doing it? I
hated it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably started this about 3 years ago. And I'm not a writer. I'm far better on video. Like, I'm far better communicating ideas, just kind of driving my car and just kind of, you know, like chopping it up that way when I'm talking to a camera. Those seem to be some of my best ones anyway. I don't know if I'll write another one. I might do a follow-up to it. Probably going to lean more into courses after this, because there's some really detailed stuff that I want to break down that people keep asking me. Yeah, but it's an interesting process. I'll probably do the Audible version. I plan on
Yeah.
reading my own, which won't be out until next year. Don't ask me to do it now. Like, I'll do it when I get to it.
Right.
Because apparently that's a pretty labor intensive process as well to just read your own book. But yeah, we'll see how it
Oh
goes.
yeah. I did so I did the audio version for this thing.
Oh,
And it's like,
whoa, dude, you read that whole thing?
yeah, it took me like a week of recording, I think 6 hours a day
Wow.
to get that finished. It was like something like, I want to say it was like 25 hours of audio when it's finished, maybe 30.
I heard Amazon's pretty bad with it. Like, if you have too much dead space, or there's too much like breathing or something like that, between words, like they won't even accept it. You have to redo the whole thing over again.
Yeah, yeah, I got a pretty good. I've got a audio editor that cleans it all up. So when I did do the audiobook reading, what I do is I'll read, and if I mess up, I'll just retake it, or sometimes I'll just say cut, and then I'll just restart at the beginning of the sentence, and so I'll just go through. So this way it flows, so I don't have to like try and say every
Oh, I see. So
perfectly.
you'll start at the start of the chapter, and if you fuck something up, then you just kind of pause, dead air, cut, and then you continue reading.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll
Understood.
just take it at the top of the last sentence. That was good,
Got it.
usually. And then the audio editor can weave it all together. And, sometimes he'll say, okay, well, there's a sentence here. If you can just re-record this one sentence, and then
Mhm.
he'll put it into there. But,
Got it. Okay.
but yeah, I think that's the most efficient way to do it. I tried like getting doing a studio recording, and it was just too painful. Like, us who have good audio setups, who are used to speaking, it's not a problem for us to record an
Okay.
audiobook,
Cool.
but it's definitely worth doing. The sales from my books, I would say more than 50% of them come from audio.
Oh, is that right?
So
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Well, so it
it's
sounds like I have to do it then.
yeah, absolutely. Like you'll make a lot more revenue from the audiobook than from print or from Kindle. I'm almost certain, because I've done this with 4 books now.
Okay.
So but so okay, so I'm curious also, what was your writing process with writing the book? Because different people write books in different ways, and I've tried it a few different ways. It's painful no matter what, but what kind of process did you use?
Um, I mostly use my coaching conversations. So I do a lot of one-on-one consults with people. Like, I mean, my price point's so high. I'm only getting booked by, lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs, pilots, fighter jet pilots, stuff like that. So I've had some really interesting people that have shared some high level stories. I always keep a notebook after each call to kind of distill and summarize, what the nature of the conversation was. Often, sometimes because they have follow up calls too. But
Mhm.
even if they don't, at least I've got like a reoccurring theme that I saw that kept popping up over and over again. So it's like, when I started to see themes popping up, like, okay, well, a lot of problems that guys invite in their lives are because of single moms. We definitely need a chapter on single moms. When you talk about divorce and marriage, we need to talk about red flags that guys can look for, before they get involved or invite a woman into their life. We need to talk about why you need to hire slowly and fire fast, and why that lesson is so important in a man's life. And it's not just in business, but it's also with friendships and women and, business partners and stuff like that. So I really just started to look for a lot of reoccurring themes.
Okay, okay, yeah, I like that. That's good, because then it's questions that guys are asking, and that's probably why the book seems so well put together, because it is the things that are actually important. Now, what about the actual process of doing the writing? Did you do something like, I remember for one of my books, I did like an hour a day every morning. For another book, I did like a marathon session where I would do like 4 or 5 hours a day and only work on that until it's done.
I
What kind
tried
of
everything,
process?
bro.
Yeah.
I tried first thing in the morning. I tried popping half a modafinil to really, like get like super focused on it, sort of thing. I tried doing it at night. I basically rewrote every chapter at least a dozen, maybe 2 dozen times to make sure that I distilled it down and had it as dense as possible, and I cut out as much fat as possible. So it was just like an over and over again thing. I probably did it in the most inefficient way possible. I just noticed on Twitter before I got on here, because Aaron Cleary writes a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I know that he wrote at least one other book this year, and he just made an announcement that he's got another book that's going to his editor already. I don't know how this guy writes books so fast. Yep. I'm clearly not an author. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this again, but yeah, it was an interesting process to go through, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's cool that, like, because before I wrote my first book, I had I mean, I got F's in writing. Like I was AP for all the other classes, but writing was like English was horrible. And then I just decided I was going to write a book, and it's like, I think that I think not enough people realize that you could just write a book. Like anyone could, you don't have to necessarily be a talented writer. You don't have to come from a writing background. You can put your thoughts on paper, and you can put it out there. I mean, it's great today that we live in a time where you could do that, and you could self-publish a book and make some decent money from it. So
yeah, the barrier to, like the gatekeepers that we've had for almost all of my life anyway, started to disappear by the time I got to about 30 or so.
Yeah.
You want to broadcast yourself in a podcast, you don't need anybody's permission. You want to broadcast yourself on a channel, don't need anybody's permission, just upload to YouTube. Want to write a book, you can self-publish on Amazon. There's really no excuse for anybody today, sit around moping about the crappy results that they get out of life, because gatekeepers have been removed almost everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's so many people that are still operating under the premise of asking permission in order to do something, and feeling like they're not qualified or they don't have the credentials. Whereas, obviously there's some people that go the other extreme, and they really shouldn't be talking about
that's the other problem too, is a lot of people with a total lack of credentials that end up, I don't know how they accumulate an audience but like birds of a feather sort of flock together, right? So there's a lot of Muppets out there that have been able to, build an audience and publish, and that's fine too, because, again, the gatekeepers are gone. So you as a guy need to decide, where do you want to allocate your energy and your attention? Do you want to give it to something that's productive, that's going to help you level up, or do you want to sit around and mope with other people too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the business side of things, when you had left the job, your first job, what made you decide to like start your own business as opposed to just getting another job? Because I think that's something that I think a lot of guys don't get, that mentality, because they're scared, right? I mean, it's scary to go and do your own thing. What made you decide to do that, to make that leap?
I started reading a lot of biographies in my 20s. Richard Branson stuff, Donald Trump. I know a lot of people hate him. Like, I get a lot of comments about my Trump book over there, but I read all of his books in my 20s. I read a lot of biographies. Every successful entrepreneur that was a big name, that had a presence out there in the world, I read all their books in my 20s for sure.
Yeah.
Mindset books, Brian Tracy stuff, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah.
All of that, like all of those genres, sort of thing. And I'd always kind of ran a business when I was a kid, because I needed money. Like, I wanted to buy shit. All of my friends had cool cars. Like, I kind of grew up in a nicer neighborhood, but we were like the poor people in a nice neighborhood. And, my friends had cool cars, cool clothes, cool shit to do. And I needed money to pay for stuff like that. My parents would never give it to me because they weren't well off, but I would just go out and, shovel. Like, it's snowing here today. Like, I would go and shovel driveways until I had enough money, until I was like dead tired. Yeah. And I had $100, $200 or something like that as a kid. I'd deliver newspapers. I would contract out part of my newspaper route to some friends. I'd take on bigger routes, right? And kind of get like a little bit of overage on that. I used to go around collecting, but like, whenever we would travel to hotels, because my mom used to work for a hotel chain when I was a kid, I used to like run up and down the hallways and collect all the booze bottles. And I'd throw them in a big crate in my dad's trunk, and then he would take me to the beer store, and I'd go and return them. And, I get like $7, $8, $10 or something like that, because they were about 10 cents each. So I was always just doing stuff to try to like invent ways to make money. So when I went through the corporate grind from my early 20s to about 30, by the time I got out, and the way that I got spit out of it, it's kind of like how guys get divorced and like, I'm not getting married again, right? Sort of thing. It's like I got spit out of the corporate world after kind of, doing all the work on that, and, making the money and getting promoted and learning all the skills. And I'm like, I'm not going back to that. Like, what a waste of time. I would sit in meetings sometimes at the executive level with the president, 3 other regional vice presidents, and then all the regional managers, because that's what I was doing. And I would listen to these guys like bark back and forth for 3 hours, accomplishing nothing.
Right.
And I just didn't want to do that again. So I had some skills. I had some insider information. I had some knowledge around the credit and collection industry. And I saw an opportunity to basically connect the debtor to the creditor in a different way that hadn't been contemplated before. Although I had seen some versions of it in different parts of the world, but nothing like I had structured here in Canada. And then I just built a business around that. and it exploded. There was a bunch of copycats that came in and kind of basically stole my contracts and my systems and my method and put it out there. And that's part of the reason why I wrote the book like 10 years ago on how to settle your own debt. I'm like, fuck it, everybody's stealing my shit. I might as well write a book on it, on how to do it yourself and at least make some money off it. Maybe to be a lead magnet or something along the line. But yeah, I was just fed up with the corporate nonsense. And I figured, look, if I'm going to have to put up with crap in a business, at least I should be running my own business so I could decide what crap I want to put up with and what I can, turn away from. Right.
Yeah. That's definitely true. That's
Plus
funny.
the ROI is so much higher when you're self-employed as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's funny. I also had read the Trump books in my 20s when I was getting into real estate investment, because I was like, this guy is this is
I mean,
one
he
of the
clearly knows something, right?
yeah,
Love him or hate him, he clearly knows something.
yeah, definitely, right. And it's funny because even if people think that like he's an idiot in many areas, it doesn't matter, because I think it's a perfect example of like, all you need to know is one thing. Like if you can do one thing really well, that's it. That's success. That's like there's I was in Mensa, and I would go to these Mensa meetings, and I stopped going because it would be all these genius people that didn't use their skill for anything. They're just so proud of
They were
how
just
smart they
bragging about
were.
being smart.
Yeah, they're playing
Yeah.
chess and Scrabble and all this stuff. They're not actually doing something with their life. And it's because it's like, but then you've got someone who you might think is an idiot. I mean, there's different gurus and whatnot online. Some people say Trump, some people don't like Grant Cardone, and they say, oh, he doesn't really know about a lot of stuff and whatever. But these guys are like good at one thing, and they do it really well, and that's all you need for success. Like, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to be able to do one thing and put in the work, and you become successful. So
Yeah. There's a lot of great truths with that too.
the other thing, guys, that to pay attention to what Rich just said here is about reading books. I think that's so important. He mentioned like The Richest Man in Babylon and so many of the biographies and books that you read, and I think that's so critical. That's why every single successful person I ever interview on this channel, if you'll notice, we almost always get into some conversation about books, because I don't know a successful entrepreneur who is not a big reader. So
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've talked to a lot of guys, and the common theme is like the knowledge of the world has been left in written form in books, right? And there's really nothing new out there. Like there's nothing new that you're going to invent as far as ideas. It's already been talked about before. It's just the reality of the world.
So now, on the financial side, then, so then you started the business yourself, and then you had some problems there, right, with a business partner that burned you. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and kind of, I guess what I'm interested in is really like, how do you get over something like that and then go on and move on? I think that's something that, from my understanding of it, it could be a life crushing type of thing. I mean, you went through a few things that could be life crushing, but you picked yourself up and went on.
Yeah. So I was actually talking about this last night on my Before the Trainwreck series. So if you go to my most recent video on my channel, I was on it for like an hour last night at least. But basically, after I took the package and I went home, I got approached by a old friend of mine that was still employed within the company. He was like, hey, I got this idea for business. You're not working right now. What do you say we do something together? So I was pretty keen on it, because I hadn't done anything on my own for a long time, and I like the idea of having a business partner, which, by the way, is generally a bad idea, with some exceptions, which I can talk about another time. But so we started working together, and that kind of blew up about 10 months later, because I mean, I learned a few months in that he had, like, one, he was a control freak, and two, he had a bad drug problem. So that blew up about 10 months later, and then that forced me to kind of go out on my own. But it was a pretty bad blow up. Like, again, I had in my mind that I had equity in a business, that I was, that I had, like guys have relationship equity. Like I had equity in the business and the relationship with him, because I'd done all the work. I was around his wife and his kids a lot, and we were jamming in the evening after hours from when he was working. And when I was working the day, we'd get together in the evening, often at his place, and just kind of shoot the breeze and hash out ideas. And, I got to the point where he was just like yelling at me one day, going on about how, what do you say exactly? Something along the lines of, you don't even exist on the books, is what he said. Like, I could change the locks on the doors right now, and there's nothing you could do because you're not on the books. As far as I'm concerned, you don't even work with me. Right.
Wow.
I'm like, what the fuck, like that was a big bitch slap, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like as a guy, like one of the biggest problems that entrepreneurs have to deal with, one of the biggest problems that men in general should learn how to deal with, is how to deal with rejection, struggles, and problems in your life. There's one of two ways that you can take it. There's a silver lining in it. There's a lesson to be learned. It's something that, you know, you can take and kind of move on from and become better. Some people just kind of sulk and dwell, and they, you know, they want to mope about it with other people, sort of thing. Again, the choice is yours. What do you want to do? But as men, one of the most important skills you need to learn is how to solve problems in life.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Wow. But yeah, that is definitely a slap in the face. Did you actually not have any equity in the company? Like,
On paper, no. And I thought I did.
And what happened when it dissolved or you left? Did you get nothing, or did
Well,
he do
I'm
something?
a pretty big guy, like, you know,
Yeah.
in stature. So,
Uh-huh.
you know, it's nice to have physical presence,
Yeah.
you know, in a room with somebody else. And he was a big guy too. Like he was a tank, but it's like, you know, we got in each other's faces, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until you pay me out.
Yeah.
And that's the very nice way of saying it. But yeah, we ended up hashing it out in a more amicable way. And I kind of went off on my own, and, you know, I built one of Canada's fastest growing companies that was recognized several times by a lot of media publications. And yeah, it was a good run. It was definitely one of those moments where I think it was about 6 or 7 years, like down the road, I kind of look back and I'm like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, was that conversation in that office that day with him yelling at me saying that I don't technically exist on the books.
Yeah. Yeah. That must have been a scary moment, though, to think that, I mean, you potentially like could have had nothing to show for it, but I mean, you fought for it, and luckily it turned out to be.
Yeah.
But I actually read one of the things that's really struck me in my life, and because I've done partnerships, I've gone through, you know, somewhat similar situations, is I read this book called The 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to
And
that one yet. Is that good?
it's good. It's good. It's surprisingly good, right? You know, 50 Cent has some pretty good wisdom from the streets. And one of the things that he said that stuck with me, there's two main things from the book. One of them was own your own corner. And he had this story about going to jail and coming back to do, you know, to sell drugs on the street, and someone took over his corner, or he wasn't working for the, you know, so he was nobody when he came back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, that stuck with me so much, because I had been doing courses for this company, Pluralsight, for a while. I had built I was getting huge royalty payments, and I had my first book was published with Manning. And I got and I started to move away from that and moving towards my own thing, because I didn't want to, you know, I want to have my own corner. And I got canceled last year on
yeah, I remember we talked about that.
Yeah. And actually, so they had my book, you know, this is the Manning one, but here you go. Now I had republished it myself. But it's all like owning your own corner is so important, because when they did that, I was able to basically give them the middle finger and say, well, you know what, fuck you, because I have my own business now. I have my own books. I don't need you guys. But so many guys, I think, get trapped into when they don't own their own corner, when they're stuck into a business situation, or in the relationship. I think the same applies. Like you can apply that owning your own corner type of thing, where you're setting the ground rules.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, a lot of guys don't have that. A lot of guys really don't have that option in life to own a corner. Like they don't have control of their world.
Yeah. So then let's talk, I think, maybe a little bit about the kind of the relationship advice that I think, I guess one big question would be, for all the kind of things that you encounter with guys, and where they screw things up, what's kind of some of maybe one of the main problems that most men struggle with, or that they get wrong when it comes to women?
Well, the main thing is they see problems, but they ignore them, you know, and whether they see them consciously or subconsciously, meaning like their intuition picks up on it, and it, you know, they get that rumble in the tummy, you know, the pain in the chest, maybe that little voice in the back of their head, somebody's like, yo, dude, you know, you want to be careful with this one, because, you know, she's got 5 kids from 4 different fathers, and she's covered in tattoos. She's got daddy issues, and she's on crack. And it's like some guys would be like, that doesn't matter. Shut up. I'm going to go and have some sex now because she likes me.
Right.
that's an extreme example, obviously, but a lot of guys really suck at paying attention to red flags, acknowledging them, and then adjusting course. They'll just plow on forward and they'll march themselves into the slaughterhouse, and they get spit out the other end, ground up, and they're like, what happened? Like, I didn't even see any of that coming. To say, you kind of did, you just ignored it.
Yeah, yeah, and you've got a whole section in the book about all the red flags. I think is pretty relevant. Going through all those and seeing those things that it's like, I think maybe it's obvious, but guys don't realize it at the time because they're in it. They're thinking about how she's different than every other woman, so they're ignoring these things. But it's like when you have it in that format where, okay, these are the red flags. It's kind of hard to deny them because it's like it either is yes or no at that point.
Yeah, it's a skill that you need to develop. It's a muscle that you need to tone. You can call it whatever it is, but it's a talent that men need to learn, and it's a very important talent that men need to learn, and very few guys are able to learn it or willing to learn it. You must get a lot of white knighting too. Some of the things that you say, it's like, "Hey man, leave her alone," sort of thing. You're a bad guy, John, sort of thing. It's like, no, I'm just talking about facts here. If you have a problem with the facts, the problem isn't with anything else, but with you believing them, sort of thing, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like I like to look at life as a lot of times as probabilities, and it's like the things that you point out as red flags. Those are factual things, and then it doesn't mean that because a woman's covered in tattoos that she's not a good person, but the probability based on the statistics is that it's probably going to be something that's going to be a problem. It doesn't necessarily 100% apply to everyone, but you should look at probabilities when you look at these things. And it's like, especially if there's multiple factors, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you've got multiple vectors of something that is, it's a high probability. If what's a doctor or Professor what's Clue, or was it Colonel Mustard is in the billiards room and he has the knife and all those things, then probably pretty good chance he's the murderer. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's one of the things that I deal with in a 20 red flag chapter is look, you can ignore my warning here. You can proceed forward and you can get into a relationship with a woman that's got these red flags, all of them, some of them, but just understand that your probability of dealing with issues down the road in the relationship that could be quite costly or very expensive will go up dramatically. So, govern yourself accordingly.
Yeah. Now, one thing that you'd mentioned in the book, which I was glad that you touched on, was BPD, like borderline personality disorder women. And I forget, you connected it to
It's tied into fear of abandonment. And usually what ends up happening is women that have a fear of abandonment tied in usually to the daddy issues with BPD, they'll start to act out in such a way in their relationships with the men as they get older that is going to lead to similar problems that they saw, growing up. Like, they basically facilitate problematic relationships. So if you can spot, people, unfortunately, BPD is more common in women, but if you can spot people that have borderline personality disorder, and again, I always say to you guys, you want to draw a perimeter around you and keep an inner circle, a tight inner circle. You only let women, friends, even family members. You can keep family members at arm's length if they're problematic. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that on the outside of the perimeter. But when you let these people on your inside world, you can definitely end up with problems in your own life, and you have nobody to blame but yourself. For the most part, if you have the knowledge. If you don't have the knowledge, go and get it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. Even you mentioned, I think, from 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene's law about the
Unhappy and unlucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Law
It
number 10,
seems
I
like
think it is.
it seems like such a harsh thing, you know what I mean? Because but it's
Well,
so
we've all
true. It's
dated
like,
women that are just like constant complainers. They're always
yeah,
unhappy. They're fighting with somebody over something. It's like Becky in the HR department or their baby daddy or something. And it's like, look, if you want to invite unhappy and unlucky people in your life, cool, do it. Just understand you're not going to have the best experience as a dude.
yeah, yeah. And like I like what you said about like even family, because I have some family and some friends that I
Yep.
keep at arm's length, and it's
I do
like,
too.
hey,
Yeah.
I demote them. I call it demoting them to acquaintances, right? It's like
Mhm.
I'm still on okay terms with them. I'm not gonna like, but I'm just they're not coming over. We're not hanging out all the time. I'm not, because you're the equivalent of the 5 people you hang around the most. And so
Correct. Yeah.
so now, as far as like the red flags and stuff, and I think a lot of the what it seems like a lot of the advice you're giving in the book, at least in the first part, there is more geared towards getting into relationships with women, right?
Yeah.
So how does that differ for guys that are not interested in relationships, that are just interested in spinning plates, or do you feel like they should still be looking at those red flags, or does it kind of change the landscape?
Yeah, and there's some exceptions. Like I've even mentioned, throughout the book, if you see this type of woman, for example, just limit your relationship, your experience with her, whatever it is you want to call it, to either a plate status, friends with benefit, whatever it is. You never get involved them on an intimate basis. And there was certain ones where I explicitly stated, like violent women, for example, that's a no-go zone. Like, bottom line, flat out, not even friends with benefits. You don't even play them. If you discover a woman that you're interested in or you're talking to has violent tendencies, and I'll give you a good example. I met this chick once, and we're having a coffee, and on the first date, she asked this question, which was really unusual. She said something like, "Have you ever been in jail or in the back of a cop car?" And I'm like, "No, why are you asking me this question?" I was like, "Wait, have you ever been in jail or in the back of a cop car?" Right. And she's like, "Well, yeah, one time I got in a fight with my ex-boyfriend and I threw a log through the front window of his house and he called the cops and, they took me away in the back of the car." I'm like, "Bitch, you're crazy. We ain't getting together ever again. See you later. Bye-bye." Right. Yeah. But, again, it's a talent. It's a skill that you got to hone as a guy. Right. And you have to decide, okay. And some guys would just overlook it. Like, maybe she was just at a bad time in her life. Like, they'll make exceptions, they'll go and break these rules for women just because she's pretty or she's got nice boobies or she's giving them attention or whatever the, rationale is that they're making up in their mind. I always say guys like to complicate their lives and then justify why, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of guys might just proceed through with that. Fortunately for me at the time, I was getting kind of red pilled and I'm like, we're done, forget it. Not even.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really important that you emphasize it in the book too, is just drawing the line on the violence part of it. Cause I think so many guys, in fact, I get on a lot of coaching calls with guys, and when we dig deep, it's like, he's being physically abused. And it's like, if you're in that situation and you don't put a stop, I mean, that's like, just cut it right there. Like that's like the line that cannot be crossed, because you can't, in today's society, like defending yourself with physical force is not an option. It's not a very smart
as a guy, you just can't do it. I mean, statistically speaking, women are more physically violent than men.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
Yeah. And I think that so many guys let that behavior, they let it slide, and then it becomes a norm, and then they get into the points where they lose their mind and they go crazy, and then bad things happen. And
the best thing that you can do at that time is just grab your cell phone, make a video of her hitting you, screaming at you, freaking out. I've seen lots of guys do this now. Like, I've seen people send me videos. I saw this one the other day. There was this chick who was just screaming, just slapping the hell out of this guy and calling him names. And there's a kid in the room, and the kid's like first laughing, at the mom hitting the dad. And then the kid starts like bawling and screaming. It's like, I feel bad for the kid more than anything. And I'm sure the guy saw this shit coming long before he busted nut in her and knocked her up. There's all kinds of parts of the equation. It's like, the whole point of the book is mental point of origin, making yourself unplugged from the nonsense and the lies, and setting strong and enforcing strong boundaries around your life so that you can be successful and not invite drama and problems into it.
Yeah. And I think it leads up to, like, I mean, obviously, some women have violent tendencies, and women are emotional, but I think a lot of it comes from guys not there or that they are accepting disrespect.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you draw the line at, for me, the line is like, if you talk to me the wrong way, that's it. Mm-hmm. Because it can't go further than that. If you draw the line there, then, it's not that someone's never going to screw up, but if they apologize, if they, if that line is clear, then it doesn't get down to the line of physical, because physical violence at that point, you've already made a lot of missteps, I think, when you get to that level.
Yeah. It's not it's not the most common response that men should use. It should be a tool in your toolbox. You should have the capacity for violence as a guy, should the need be called upon you and it's appropriate, but it shouldn't be relied upon as the first, second, or even third, point of response, really.
Now, what about guys that are, because we have all of the, in the men's community, right? There's all of the factions and all the MGTOW and the black pill and
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff and the debates over all these things. So, just from your perspective, right? With what you've gone through, what you've experienced with all the guys that you coach, what's really important for guys if they want to attract a high quality woman? If they, is it, the whole looks, money, status thing? Where do you kind of sit on that? What kind of advice would you give to guys, if they practically want to be able to actually get a woman that they want? What should
Mm.
they be doing and focusing on?
Yeah, I have a chapter in my book on that in great detail, actually. Um, yeah, looks, money, status matters. I mean, you definitely want to max out, within reason in areas that you can control. Um, I'd still say stay away from surgeries like breaking your shins to make yourself half an inch taller, or jaw reconstruction, unless you've got like a severe birth defect or something that you got to deal with. But you can really looks max quite a bit. I mean, I talk to a lot of guys, and you probably notice this too. But I mean, one of the questions that I often ask them when they're struggling is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best version of you, nobody else, just you,
Mhm.
where would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? And you'd be surprised how many guys are like 4, 5, 3. It's like, why are you even dealing with women? Like, women don't even swipe right on guys on dating apps unless they see you as an 8 out of 10 or better.
Right.
Right. And that's even starting at 3, like 3 to 10 women. Like, even a 3 will only swipe right on an 8. Right.
Yeah.
She's got this preconceived notion in her head. It's just bonkers to me. But either way, like, weight that you got to lose, money you got to make, debt that you got to get rid of, a style, like a look that you have to have. That's all work that you have to do as a guy. Because women are beauty objects, men are success objects. So you just can't look good. You have to look good. Plus, you have to have done something of some significance in your life. If you're 20 years old and you have a plan and you're an alpha Chad, awesome, cool. Women will tolerate that. If you're a 47-year-old guy that's gone through the divorce grinder and you got nothing to show for yourself, and you've been ground through, and you're living in your parents' basement, and you have a plan at 47, they don't have a lot of patience for that, right? As
Yeah.
as guys get older, it's kind of expected of them by the opposite sex and by society in general to have done something. I did this cast once with Conk. I think you know who he is, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
we did this cast about a year and a half ago, and men, generally speaking, are net over producers for pretty much their entire life. Like, as long as they're productive, from the age of like 18 well into their 50s or 60s, they produce more than what they consume. Women,
Right.
on the other hand, I think they don't start producing more than they consume until they hit around menopause. And I think that's because they're still doing some production, but they're also taking on additional childcare, like grandkids and stuff like that, and like management of multiple households. I'm not exactly sure what all the details are, because we did this like well over a year and a half ago now. But generally speaking, men overproduce for the vast majority of their life, so it's kind of expected of men to go and do the work. And that's why I keep pounding this out there to guys, like, do the damn work, right?
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean, Rich? What's the work that I got to do? The fucking work. Do it, right? Like, what you got to do.
Right. Yeah. I,
It's
I
like,
love
how
how,
do I lose weight? Move more, eat better. Like,
right.
you need a fucking, prescription for it.
Yeah. It's not that people don't know what they need to do. They don't want to do what they need to do. And they want the shortcut. They want the answer
They
that's
want the cheat
easy.
codes. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I'm going to start using that. How you ask guys how do they rate themselves on a 1 to 10, their the best version of themselves.
Yep.
That's so relevant, because there's very few guys I think that would ever. I mean, I don't think there's anyone. I've never encountered someone that I would say would rate themselves like above an 8, that's complaining, that has a black pill type of philosophy, that
Well,
doesn't
I've
have a good life.
I've never
Uh,
booked with anybody to coach one-on-one that said that they're a 9 or a 10.
mhm.
They don't
Yeah,
need my help. The world's perfect because they've already done the work on themselves.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I think that's so important. Like, at least you do the work. At least when I've dealt with guys that have the real black pill mentality. I'm like, well, let me see your 6-pack abs. Like, let's start there. Because
Bro,
if
they don't
you've
even
done
show
it,
their faces. You're not going to see six-pack abs, trust me.
but it's like, if you've done the work, then let me see the work. Like, let's
Yeah.
see. Like, because if you show up and you've done all these things and then you still aren't having success, then I might have some empathy for you. But if you haven't paid your dues, then what can you expect? So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's so then so then for guys, and well, I think also like what you said about what's expected of men. I think a lot of men think that's unfair, but they don't realize the advantage, right? Like, guys like us that are older, who are successful, who physically look good, who have taken care of themselves. There's not many of us. Like, most of the guys that are in our age category are fat and lazy and don't have much to show for themselves. And so it's kind of like I feel like the competition is pretty thin up here. And so you sort of like, if you're willing to do the work, you sort of get the lion's share of rewards. Whereas, if you're not, then like, as you age, it becomes worse and worse for you.
Yeah, it's really important to start young and put an emphasis on self-care. I like playing this game at the grocery store, where it's like, I mean, you can't do it now because they have all this social distancing and stuff. But before all that, I used to love watching people unload their grocery cart on the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And then looking at what's on the conveyor belt, and then looking at them, and then looking again at the conveyor belt. And it's like, there's always a direct correlation between what they eat and what they look like.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's very true. Yeah. That's funny. So we're running a bit out of time here, but I want to ask you, just like before we end this this interview, about what kind of advice, like, that would you give to guys just overall, that are listening, that really, I think a lot of guys look up to you. They look up to guys like you and myself, that have kind of been successful in different areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what is it? I think sometimes guys will look at you and they'll be like, okay, well, yeah, just that's just Rich. He's just, he got lucky, or he's just gifted or special in some way. And they don't think they can do it. They think that, yeah, that's just, whatever. They blame it on genetics. They'll blame it on whatever. What do they need to do? The guys that want to be like you, that aspire to, to have the things that you have, what do they need to do?
Well, they got to take ownership. They have to take a good hard look at themselves, their lives, the choices they've made, the results that they've gotten. It's a 3-step process. You have results, choices, and beliefs. And the results that you get, I can always tell what somebody's belief system looks like, because all I got to do is look at their results. If they get shit results out of life, it's because they make crap choices every day, every week, every year. And it's all based on a broken, outdated belief system. I think on the back cover of the book, I mentioned that there's a new rule book, and most guys didn't get the memo. And okay, there's one part of that where it's like, okay, you've been kind of lied to your entire life. I get it. There's a lot of BS that, society has fed us. Fine. But if you hear somebody say you've been lied to, and there's a different set of rules that you can take a look at, and there's things that you can do that will improve the quality of your life and your satisfaction and your happiness, then go and look at guys that are successful, that have what you want, because success leaves clues, and then follow their instructions. And while that might seem simple, that's like the general overarching, at 30,000 feet of altitude, view of the landscape. There's a lot of work that needs to be done between the, I feel like a 4 out of 10 to, I feel like the best version of myself. And it might be months of work. It could be years of work, but
Right.
there's work, but there's work that needs to be done between your starting point, where you are now, and where you want to get to. Or you can choose to take the loser pill and hang out in the doomer sort of corner of the internet and sulk with other people. And that's fine too. That's a choice that you decide to make. Nobody cares though. Like, nobody cares about guys. So don't think for a minute that whether you're with them or you're in the comments right now, there's probably people in it right now that are trying to shit on this cast or me or you or something, but nobody cares. Like, you're not going to have any influence on my life. My girl's going to come over. She's going to make dinner. She's going to clean it up. We're going to bang. I don't care about what's being said over here. It's of no interest to me. I have a great life, and it's because I've structured it in such a way and enforced certain boundaries and learned certain skills and techniques and strategies that I can live that way and I feel fulfilled. So just go out there, looking for the information. Like I said, I mean, everything that I wrote in my book is essentially already out there on either different web pages, videos, other books, from the past and history. I just happen to compile it all, distill it into 200 words and slam it out there. I mean, it's $10. Go grab it. I mean, it's useful.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's good advice. Now, one last thing I think that I think it's important to address is for the guys that, they're hearing what you're saying, right? And even I think some guys will read your book or even, Rollo Tomas, Rational Male, and they're angry about this, right? They feel like this is unfair, that, like it instead of inspiring them to action, it inspires them to feel, to have the victim mindset. What
Well, I've been there too. Like
yeah.
I think I mentioned it in the book too, because there was a time when I was going through the divorce grinder, and I had literally just gotten off a call with my family lawyer, and he's like, "Look, you don't want to go to court on this because you've got the penis you're going to lose." And I'm like, "What? Like, what does having the penis have to do with winning in court?" He's
Right.
like, "Family law is hostile towards men. You're not going to win this one. You want to stay out of the courthouse. You want to do this." And I was getting absolutely nowhere. Like I was feeling like a loser. I felt like I had no control over my life. It was spiraling out of control. And it was the only time in my life that I legitimately thought about taking permanent steps to a temporary problem in my life at the time. And it was like, I was driving on the highway and I was like, just take off the seatbelt, floor it, and hit a concrete overpass pillar and be done fast. Right. And I mean, that was a low point in my life. It was probably one of the lowest points. I don't think that you can get any lower than having that feeling.
Yeah.
But as a guy, again, the burden of performance is on you. You have to do the work on yourself. They don't give a shit about guys.
Yeah.
Everything in society is structured to protect women. They have endless numbers of women's shelters, but every single homeless guy you see on the street, again, is a guy. It's not a woman, right? That's just the way that society is structured. So stop thinking that, things should be more fair, or there should be some kind of handout, or if I just ignore women enough, then they're just going to course correct and start behaving themselves again.
Right.
None of that stuff is ever going to work. The only thing that's going to work is you take a good hard look at yourself, you take an accounting of yourself and say, okay, this is what I'm at. This is where I'm at. This is the shitty cold hard truth. Let's go do the work now. Right.
Yeah.
And work is always dressed in overalls, and it's hard. And most people try to avoid it. That's just not the right answer to doing the work. You actually have to do it. That's why it's called doing the work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, it's it doesn't matter to complain about things. Like the rules of the game are what they are, and you just have to learn how to master the rules. You didn't make the rules,
learn the new
rules.
rules. There's a brand new rule book out there. I just literally wrote it. Learn the rules, follow it, and you will be better than you were last year. I promise.
Excellent. So guys, check it out. There's a link, like I said, down in the description below. I'll drop it in the chat here as well to go buy the book, Unplugged Alpha. Get it now, and and support Rich, but also get it just because it's going to have a lot of solid advice. Like I said, I read through it. I just read through it in one sitting on the airplane because it was so good, and it reads easy. It's one of those books that reads really easy. I think you guys are going to find a lot of value out of it, and I don't say that lightly. So go check it out. Go buy it, and then when the audio version comes out next year, go buy that one too. So
thanks, man. Yeah, and that means a lot coming from John Somnus too. So appreciate you having me on and giving me an opportunity to share some of these stories that never made it in there.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, guys, take care, and thanks again, Rich.
Peace.